Book of the Dead becoming God in ancient Egypt. Production and use. How a Book of the Dead manuscript was produced. The ritual context of the Book of the Dead. Rituals after burial and creating the Books of the Dead. The ritual performance of some spells took place on occasions following burial. Because the original manuscript was deposited with the deceased, alternate copies of spells were presumably used for this purpose. Including the texts on papyrus was likely believed to provide benefit to the deceased through the text's very presence, even if no ritual actually took place post-burial. The instructions of spell 190 call for its performance throughout the year, on the day of the New Moon Festival, the Sixth-day Festival, the Wag, Thoth, and Sokar festivals, the birth of Osiris, and the Night of Haker. Because such spells likely originated in a temple setting, the instructions may in fact be a remnant from their liturgical use and were not expected to be applied in the funerary context. Creating the Books of the Dead. The spell selection, sequences, and vignettes of each individual Book of the Dead depended to some extent on the choice of the owner and availability of funds. However, the ultimate decision on a manuscript's details was up to the scribe and the trends preferred by his workshop. The scribes who created, copied, and compiled these books were also priests and scholars. Their contribution may be seen in the originality and internal consistency of most manuscripts, even of the shortest kind. Scribes produced new meaning and nuance by adding new passages, reinterpreting them, altering words or entire spells, or correcting a perceived error. The scribal revisions that attempt to better understand and explain what they were copying should be seen as a ritual act. Originally comprised of Second Intermediate Period coffin texts, Books of the Dead incorporated new material during the New Kingdom. Later scribes continued enriching them with non-funerary texts of applicable power. Scribal workshops likely maintained master copies of groups of spells and full sequences. Scribes copied from more than one source, combined the sources at their individual discretion, and incorporated their interpretations within the spell they were copying. They use phrases like ki didi or ki are another saying or another spell, respectively, to introduce alternatives in Book of the Dead spells. Adding another version of a spell conceivably strengthened the efficacy, and perhaps provided a deeper understanding of complex texts. From early on, spell 17 incorporates this process. Cryptic passages of this spell conclude with the question "what is it?", usually followed by a no, less obscure explanation. The Sate canonization must have involved years of systematic research into earlier manuscripts, archives, and monuments. The subsequent abbreviation of spells or omission of parts thereof, as well as specific choices from the available groups, certainly held meaning. Although spoken Egyptian of the late period significantly diverged from the language of the spells. Most changes within spells were intentional rather than errors. The revisions demonstrate that scribes understood the textual nuance of spells composed in an archaic dialect. Throughout the entire history of Books of the Dead, the constant modification of spells demonstrates a deliberate attempt to improve understanding and efficacy for the living and deceased users. Book of the Dead Becoming God